welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn, and this video is a little bit different as you can already tell. I have a sample. This is actually most of the Nuvo drops that I have. Not all, but pretty much most of them. And I just wanted to kind of share what I've learned about Nuvo drops and the various different types of drops that Tonic Studio creates. Just recently, I picked up these 4, and they are the brand new Aroma Drops that were released during Tonic Studio's birthday week not too long ago. And as soon as they described what these were, I knew I had to get them because I just think the idea of opening up a card and being greeted by this waft of, just gorgeous scent is so unique, so novel, and so special that I am really, really eager to start using these on all of my cards. These are, I forgot to mention, they are scented drops. So they each have a different scent, and I'm really looking forward to more in this line because I'm crossing my fingers for a lavender scented and lavender color drop because lavender is, after blue, is my favorite color, and it's definitely my favorite scent. So, I'm still very much a Nuvo novice, so take anything I say in this video with a grain of salt because it's only coming from my own observation and experience. I don't know how any of these drops are formulated, and so any conclusions that I'm drawing are really just, from my speculation, really, and what I've observed as I've used it. I didn't really use Nuvo drops too much before I started subscribing to the Tonic Studios monthly craft kits. And in those kits, every month you get 1, sometimes 2 full-size bottles of drops. And so that has really made up a good majority of what I have here. Although once I started using the Nuvo drops that came in the kit, I quickly realized how much I enjoyed using them and have started to purchase more. And so it's definitely a go-to for me in terms of those last finishing touches of a card or a mini album project. So what I have done is I went through and I listed in no particular order, so I don't know, when these were released and in what order, but all of the different types of Nuvo drops there are. And then I have at least one of every type of drop there is, and in the case of stone drops, I only have the one. But I took a sample of each of these different drops and then applied it to white and applied it to black cardstock just to see, how they differ, because sometimes things look a little bit different when they're on a colored cardstock versus on white cardstock. And what I have learned, or the conclusion that I've drawn, is if I had to sort of kind of list the properties that distinguish each of these drops from one another, I came up with 4 different properties. The first is opacity, so how clear or translucent the drop is. The finish of the drop, so how does it look once it's dried? The texture of the drop, so how does it feel to the touch? And any special effects that the drop may offer. So I just want to sort of start in the center here, where I've listed gloss and metallic. Those are different types of crystal drops. And if you look on the bottles, they will actually say, for instance, this one, it says crystal drop gloss, duck egg blue, versus this bottle, which is also a crystal drop, and its name is listed as metallic navy blue. So they're both crystal drops, but one is a gloss, one is a metallic, and the metallic just has a very pearlized finish to it, whereas the gloss is very, very shiny. It sort of has that high polish look to it. And so I've got a sample in some blues and a sample in some reds. As compared to the next line down, which are the vintage drops, these are also opaque, just like the crystal drops are. However, they have a matte finish. And so instead of having that high glossy shine where you can actually see kind of the light bouncing or reflecting off of it, the matte is I want to say dull, but not in a bad or negative way, just that's the finish of it. It has a very matte, dull finish, and I actually have grown to really, really like vintage drops. I think I've only gotten like one or two in craft kits before, but I've, as you can maybe see, I've purchased several more. And one of the nice things that I didn't mention about the Nuvo drops is that they all have different combination of bottle shape and kind of cap shape and size, and those distinguishing factors make it really easy for you to, at a glance, determine what type of drop you're grabbing. So the vintage drops come in this rectangular style of bottle, and they have this more ornate style of cap, and as opposed to the crystal drops, which have a round bottle and this sort of tapered top here. So they're all a little bit different, and it just makes it easy for you to kind of identify which is which at a glance. So those are the crystal drops and the vintage drops. Both opaque, but they have just different finishes. They're both smooth to the touch. The next set of drops are dream drops, which are also opaque, it seems. I would not have thought so just looking at the bottle bit, but the one that I have, Cloud 9, is very opaque. So as you can see, it blocks out the black cardstock completely. And so whether it's on white or colored cardstock, it's going to look pretty much the same, except for that visual trick of the eye where something surrounded with white kind of looks different from something surrounded by black. So there is that, but the drop itself actually looks the same color. And what's interesting about the dream drops is that it does have a kind of a shiny finish, not quite as glossy as gloss, but it's shiny. But the neat effect that it has is it has a very iridescent kind of shine to it. So if you tilt it in as it catches the light at different angles, you'll actually see different colors. I don't know if you can really see that on camera, but it's definitely got that more iridescent effect to it. And I would say in terms of shine, it's very similar to the metallic. So it also has a very pearlized kind of shine to it. So I would say the metallic and the dream in terms of shininess are somewhere in between your gloss and your vintage, which is completely shiny in the gloss and completely matte on the vintage. Then the new Aroma Drops. Now these have dried now for I think at least 48 hours, which is kind of the recommended drying time. And they are somewhere in between a completely clear and completely opaque. It's a little bit harder to tell on the blueberry smoothie because it's such a dark color. It almost looks like it's completely translucent on the black. And, to look at it in real life, it does kind of look translucent, but I can still tell it's a little bit opaque. A little bit easier to tell on the vanilla cupcake one because you can just see how well, I don't know if the camera is picking it up. To the naked eye, I can see that this yellow is a little bit darker, and not just because it's surrounded by a dark cardstock, but the drop itself is a little bit darker, which means I think some of the black cardstock that is behind it is shining through as opposed to how it looks on white. So I would say in terms of opacity, the Aroma Drops aren't completely opaque, but they also aren't completely translucent. They do have a nice shine, so they've got a glossy finish to them. And of course, their special effect is that they are scented. Then the other drops that I would say in terms of opacity are in that middle ground are the glow drops. So you can see it's very similar to the Aroma Drops where just like right around the edges, there's some translucency, but you can still see the color of the drop. It just doesn't look exactly the same as it does on white. So I think it's sort of semi-transparent in that way. And with the glow drops, they've also got a very glossy, shiny finish to them, and their special effect is that they glow in the dark. Then the glitter drops are a little bit tricky because I'm not sure why, but with the blue here, I can definitely still tell that this drop is blue on the black cardstock, but when I look at the red, it looks almost completely translucent and clear almost. And I can see a hint to the naked eye. I can definitely see a hint of the red coming through, but it is still very translucent, more so than I would say the glow drops. And so that's another one that's sort of in terms of opacity, not quite 100% translucent, but not 100% opaque too. It's somewhere in between. These have a shiny glossy finish as well. They are slightly textured because there is glitter embedded in the suspension fluid of the drop itself, and their sort of special effect is that they do have that glitter suspended in there, so it's got that sparkle and shine of glitter, and so as you tilt it, you'll get that glitter sort of reflecting in the light. So that's another really neat one, and another that's one of my favorites. Then in terms of completely translucent, we've got jewel drops, and I don't have, this may be the only one that I have of the jewel drops, but I definitely do like using it. It may not be at the top of my favorites, but it's definitely a fun one to use, and you can see how different it looks on white versus black, but that just means that you'll have some pretty neat effects using, especially experimenting on colored cardstock, because I've put maybe the blue onto like a different shade of blue cardstock, and it's a little bit different than using the crystal clear Morning Dew drop, which is actually a crystal drop. So unlike the other crystal drops that are opaque, the Morning Dew crystal drop dries clear, and it explicitly states that on the bottle as well. So I would say this is definitely more of a jewel drop in terms of how jewel drops are defined, but my guess is that, and again, this is just a guess, the crystal drops were probably the first to get released, but they knew, how nice it would be to have this perfectly clear drop that looks like a water droplet, and so that's why it was released with that line, and then they probably kind of extended that whole line of translucent drops and created the jewel drop line. Just a speculation. But as you can see on black, it's so clear. The black cardstock is coming through, and you can see the blue jewel drop here compared to the dewdrop, Morning Dew drop. They both pretty much look the same, and that's because it is 100% translucent, and so you can't even tell that this has any hints of blue in it at all. So so those are your translucent or clear drop options. And then coming down onto this side, we've got stone drops and glitter accents, and these are both highly textured, and so the stone drop it's meant to be just that, to actually look like, you know, a piece of rock or stone. It definitely has a more matte finish to it and is very rough in texture. And I'm not sure what it is that is providing the texture. It's not glitter. The glitter accents are really jam-packed with glitter, so they've got that effect of just being I mean, it really just looks like a ball of glitter. And so it's pretty unique in that way, but they've both got that rough texture. The stone in particular is a lot rougher. And I would love to learn if anyone has tips or tricks on how to get a really good shape from the stone drops. I always find that mine always look a little bit funny. Like, I can't seem to get a nice round drop to come from it. And I know that the nozzle is larger than on the other drop bottles because it has that whatever it is that's creating that texture. So those particles are larger, and so you can't quite make, you know, nice small drops like I can with the others. Even the glitter accents, which I think also has a slightly larger opening to the bottle, I can still make a pretty small drop from that, but I've just never really been able to make nice shaped stone drops. And maybe that's fine, because if it's supposed to be like stone, which, you know, you don't really expect one to be perfectly round. But if anyone has any tips and tricks, I would love to learn how to get better with those. The only thing in terms of creating the drops that I've found useful, actually there's two. So the first is that I really like to make my drops on these paper release liners. So I've got wide rolls of double-sided adhesive tape, and so whenever I cut off large sections like these, I'll save them, and then I just make my drops on them because they have sort of a waxy finish. And so when you make your drops on these, you can just pop them off later and then apply them onto your project when it's dry. And the benefit to that is that you'll have, you know, if I make a drop that looks a little bit misshapen or a little wonky or whatever, then I haven't ruined my project. And really the larger benefit to it, for me anyways, is that whenever I go to apply drops directly on my card or my project, I am always really hesitant as to where to put drops. So when I have them made up and already dry, I can kind of move them around just like you would move around maybe, you know, pearls or little gemstones. So they have that benefit to them as well. The other little tip that I use is, let me try to demonstrate. So I'll just take one here. So what I like to do when I'm going to try to do this midair, so it may not turn out well, but hopefully you'll see what I'm doing. So what I like to do is store them upside down, and I'll show you how I store these at the end, because ever since I started organizing and storing them in this new way, I find that I use them a lot more. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to squeeze. And when it gets to be the size that I want, I'm not going to squeeze anymore, but I'm also not going to let go of the bottle. I'm just going to hold the pressure there, do that final little swirl, and then I'm going to let go of the bottle. Because what I find is that sometimes when you let go, whatever fluid is at the end of the nozzle here, it will get sucked back into the bottle. And sometimes, you know, if you're doing that and the tip of your nozzle is still in your drop, it's going to suck some of that fluid that's in your drop back into the bottle, which might change the shape of your drop. And so here, I actually did pretty well on this one. It's, even though I did it midair. So that's the thing that I have found that helped me. Let me do it again in a darker, maybe that'll be, I don't know if you'll see it better, but so I just start to squeeze when it gets to the size that I want, I don't squeeze anymore, but I also don't let up. I just complete my swirl, and then I let go, and then I get the drop the size that I want. The other thing to keep in mind is if you do use something like this, this has a very slick surface to it. And so the other thing that I've found is with slicker surfaces, a lot of times, if you tap on the bottom of your piece of paper, that will just help to kind of settle and round out the drop. And when you do that when it's still wet like this, it'll help to, these will all self-level and create that beautiful dome. But, if you got some weird peaks or something, you could, give it a little bit of a tap, and that should kind of level everything out a little bit faster. And on a slick surface, the tendency is that the drop might spread more than if you were to apply this on maybe cardstock that is a little bit more textured and grippier. Because there's not as much friction on a slicker surface, if you tap aggressively, you might get a flatter drop, which might be what you want. If you don't want a ton of dimension, maybe you want a flatter drop. So it's just something to keep in mind is, whatever you're putting your drops on, the slicker the surface, the more it has the potential to spread out if you are tapping aggressively. So what I'll do is I'll just let this dry and at least 48 hours, and then I'll start using it on my projects. So that's pretty much all I know about Nuvo drops. I think that they are a fantastic way to add those final finishing touches to your card, and I'm definitely really excited to use the Aroma Drops on my next set of cards. So as I mentioned, here's how I store my drops. I use these photo storage cases. They come in a larger carrying case that actually has 24 individual 4x6 photo storage cases. And so these are really perfect. They fit several bottles of drops. These are my glitter accents. And what I actually do is I have them stored by colorway. So I just keep all of the kind of similar colors together, and then my pre-made drops I keep in these are actually for jewelry. I think if you make and sell jewelry, which I don't, I just thought these were really cute storage options for little things like this. So these little bottles fit perfectly, or containers fit perfectly in here. So my pre-made drops that are dry and left over from projects, for example, I just leave here as well. So when I go to grab some purple drops, I already have some pre-made, and I have the range of purple drops that I own all in one case. And so that has definitely become really, really useful to me. And now that I have them in, this type of storage where I can actually see everything, I am using my drops a lot more. So here's my range of metallics, and the Tonic craft kits used to have these mini kind of sample size bottles, but I really, really love the fact that they are now doing full size bottles, because they last a long time for sure, but they're also the kind of thing that, I don't think these dry up over time. I don't know. I've only really been using them a lot for the past year and a half or so, but so it's nice to get the larger size, because I know I'll definitely be using these a lot. And I do have a wide selection of whites. So I've got the vintage, which are matte. I've got Morning Dew, which is perfectly clear. Simply White, which is a crystal gloss, and then the Cloud 9. So it's they're all a little bit different, because they all have a different finish, they all have a different effect to them, and so it's nice to have a range, even though it may seem kind of redundant, but it really isn't. And the other thing that I really like are, I think the Dream Drops I only have one of, but I really, really love those. So I am hoping to actually get more Dream Drops. I always look at the weekend bundle deals because those are a fantastic time to pick up drops because they're always listed at such an amazing price. So so it's definitely worthwhile to always take a peek at those because it's a great way to actually, you know, expand on your drops if you don't have a lot. So these are the various drops that I have, and when I put them in the larger storage container, they do store upside down like this. So the bottles are already upside down, which means they're not going to have the little air bubble, and they'll be ready to use right away. The other thing I wanted to just mention as just a final observation is the Aroma Drops. They do state that the scent will fade over time, and I think that's to be expected, of course, but what I don't know is whether they only fade once you've, you know, used them and they're exposed to air. These I dropped, I put these drops on maybe 2-3 days ago, and I can still smell them. I mean, I have to hold it up to my nose in order to smell it, but I definitely can still smell the scent coming off of it. And so that's been 2-3 days. I hope that the scent only starts to fade once you've applied it to your project, as opposed to over time it just not having a scent at all, even though it's in the bottle. So I don't know if it's the case that you really have to use these up quickly to still get that effect of the aroma. But even, you know, even if it does lose its scent while in the bottle, these are still beautiful colors, and you can use them as you would any of your other drops. They are, as I mentioned, not quite opaque like the crystal drops and not quite transparent like the jewel drops. They are somewhere in between, but they are still really lovely colors. So that's the one thing that I've noticed so far on the scented one. So the scent does last at least a few days. So I think that's going to be really important because I will probably not make these drops in advance on those paper liner sheets that I showed earlier, but rather apply them directly to my project maybe a day or two before I plan on putting the card in the mail. That way they have time to completely dry before they go into the envelope, so they'll kind of retain their shape, but they'll still have their scent as well once they go into the envelope, and hopefully that scent just continues to intensify once it's in the envelope. That's my hope anyways. So that'll be my plan for how I use these, because I definitely want whoever gets the card to have that experience of opening it up and being greeted with this beautiful aroma. So that's it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, commenting, and sharing, and you can hit the subscribe button and the notification bell if you want to see future videos that I post to my channel. Thank you so much, and until my next video, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Bye!